F125 is here, with a whole list of new features including the return of braking point, laser scanned tracks, reverse circuits, and the biggest update to MyTeam since its introduction all the way back in 2020. This year, you are now just the owner of the brand new team, signing 2 drivers rather than being one yourself. Pretty much the entire game mode has been overhauled, with new owner perks, fan ratings and research and development being separated for more flexibility in manufacturing and applying new parts. The cost cap has been introduced, as well as a bunch of customization options using the new sponsorship system, and honestly a lot more that I can't cover. Now this whole channel is based around simulating 10 years in this game mode, so I want to see just how much these changes can affect the results of the sport across the next decade. Now make sure you subscribe if you haven't already to join me on this year's game, but let's get into the first simulation on F125. Now the first season, with all drivers at their current real life teams, except Jack Doohan, will give us a Red Bull masterclass as they managed to secure the most points across a 24 race season, with Ferrari not too far behind, but most surprisingly McLaren are nowhere near a championship fight. Comparing the real life standings, in which McLaren are by far the best team, this first season doesn't seem to have the same fate as they finish in 3rd. Moving over to the Drivers' Championship, now the graphics for these videos have seen a little bit of a shake up, hopefully you all like them. But we do see Lando Norris only managing 4th place finish, with Oscar Piastri very shockingly all the way down in P7, not even winning a single race this year. Instead, 3rd place will be awarded to George Russell, who drags his Mercedes just 9 points clear of Norris. Now, there's quite a large gap to 2nd place as Charles Leclerc finishes this season as the runner-up, behind the reigning champion of Max Verstappen, who makes it 5 in a row. He was very impressive this year, taking a whopping 14 race wins alongside 4 sprint race wins, for a points gap of 175 points. Both Ferraris will be able to take race wins, with Leclerc winning 3 times and Hamilton taking 1, while George Russell took 4, and Lando Norris rounded out the season with just 2 race wins. Now there is a new setting in this year's MyTeam to increase driver moves, however for this simulation I've left this as the standard rate. Season 1 will end with the retirement of Fernando Alonso, with Liam Lawson making a jump over to Aston Martin. The Racing Bulls then sign a Red Bull Jr. in the form of Pepe Marti to make his debut next year. Yuki Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz will all swap teams, with Tsunoda heading to Williams, Piastri to Red Bull, and Carlos Sainz makes his return to McLaren to once again partner Lando Norris. Now the first season will also end with some regulation changes, firstly affecting the aerodynamics and powertrain departments going into the 2nd season. Now despite the regulation changes, Red Bull do remain at the top of the standings, with Ferrari and McLaren behind, and in fact the only teams to change place were the Kick Sauber and the Racing Bulls, who swapped down in P9 and P10. Lando Norris once again falls just short of the top 3, as George Russell once again finishes in the 3rd place spot, finishing a lot closer to Charles Leclerc this season, who will once again finish as the runner-up. Now for the 6th year in a row, Max Verstappen is the fastest man on earth, and takes yet another championship title. The points gap did come down slightly after Max would only win 11 races this year, with Charles Leclerc managing to take 7. George Russell continues to win 4 races, and Lando Norris will also once again win just twice. Another legend of the sport, Lewis Hamilton, will follow in Alonso's footsteps, and has also decided to retire from Formula 1. Max Verstappen makes a shocking move over to Ferrari, with Alex Albon returning to the team that caused him so many problems. Esteban Ocon makes a move over to Williams, Jack Doohan moves over to Haas, with Alpine deciding to promote Paul Aron instead of Franco Colapinto. Now the powertrain department will once again hit some regulation changes, this time alongside the chassis department. The loss of Max Verstappen really hits Red Bull hard, and they fall all the way down to 3rd place, with both Ferrari and McLaren rising the position, with the Scarlet Red team winning their first Constructors' Championship in almost 20 years. Verstappen's replacement of Alex Albon would see Red Bull's highest finish as he scores a P5 finish, ahead of his new teammate Piastri, but a long way off Verstappen and the top 3. Now Verstappen would take his new Ferrari to 3rd place this season, being stopped from securing the 7th world title to equal Hamilton and Schumacher. Charles Leclerc will once again finish in 2nd place, behind a brand new world champion, as Lando Norris is able to take his first ever championship title. Now he will finish this season with an 18-point gap to Leclerc, with Norris' 7 wins just beating out Leclerc's 6. Max Verstappen was still up there securing 5 race wins, with George Russell consistently winning 4 times, and Alex Albon winning his first ever Formula 1 race while driving for Red Bull. Now the latest driver to retire is set to be Nico Hülkenberg, with the Kick Sauber team bringing in the new Williams Academy driver Victor Martins for his F1 debut. Ferrari managed to continue their success to take yet another Constructors' Championship, winning back-to-back titles for Season 4, with McLaren and Red Bull rounding out the top 3. In fact, once again the only teams to swap places were the Kick Sauber and Racing Bulls at the bottom end of the standings. The Drivers' Championship does see some more changes, with Alex Albon moving up to 4th, overtaking George Russell, while Charles Leclerc will no longer finish as the runner-up after he takes 3rd place this year. He is beaten by his teammate for the first time in the simulation, as Max Verstappen takes P2, behind a retaining Lando Norris, who takes his 2nd championship title. 10 race wins will contribute to his 100-point lead over Verstappen, who himself would win just 5. Leclerc would continue George Russell's tradition of winning 4 races, with Alex Albon also winning twice. Kimi Antonelli finally makes an appearance in this simulation to win his first ever Formula 1 race, while Esteban Ocon also returns to add another win to his tally. The driver market in the first 2 seasons were too good to be true, with the only driver swaps this year being Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc trading places at the midway of this simulation. And there will be some smaller regulation changes which will affect the aerodynamics and durability departments heading into Season 5. Now that swap wouldn't affect the standings too much, with Ferrari retaining their championship title, while McLaren dropped to 3rd place, being overtaken by Mercedes after Kimi Antonelli starts to show his talent. He would in fact become Mercedes' #1 driver this year, as he would take 4th place, overtaking his teammate George Russell. Though the Ferrari driver of Max Verstappen could only achieve 3rd place, and is beaten by his new teammate, with Lando Norris finishing as the runner-up. Now despite McLaren's poor performance in the Constructors' Championship, their driver Charles Leclerc was able to take his car all the way to the top of the standings, finishing with just an 11-point lead over P2. Leclerc and Norris would actually be tied on 7 race wins this season, but a sprint win for Leclerc could have been the answer to his success. Verstappen wasn't too far behind after he won 6 races, with both Kimi Antonelli and Oscar Piastri taking 2 race wins each. Carlos Sainz did move to McLaren early on in this simulation, then kinda just disappeared until the end of this season, which will see him retire, as McLaren signed Kimi Antonelli in hopes of helping him fulfill his potential. Mercedes signed Gabriel Bortoleto, with the Kick Sauber team bringing in Jack Crawford for his F1 debut next year. Now for Season 6 and the rest of this simulation, I did reduce the number of races to 16, just because 24 race seasons took way too long to simulate due to all the new features, and also lets me remove the sprint races to really bring down the time. However, McLaren are the ones capable of capitalising on the shorter schedule, as they win their first title of this simulation. Last season's 3rd place Max Verstappen will drop down to P4 this season, with teammate Lando Norris falling down to 3rd place. The reigning champion of Charles Leclerc is not able to retain his title, with the newest McLaren driver Kimi Antonelli showing just what he can do, winning his first ever driver's title. Now he would take a total of 6 race wins across this season, with his teammate and Max Verstappen could only be able to win 3 times. Lando Norris on the other hand would take 4 race wins, while finishing just under 20 points behind the champion. Now this year saw a trio of drivers retiring and leaving the sport, with Max Verstappen, Esteban Ocon and Lance Stroll all leaving open seats. Firstly, Franco Colapinto makes his long-awaited return to Formula 1 to drive for Aston Martin, while Williams signs Zane Maloney for his debut. Ferrari will try to keep the pressure on McLaren by signing their former driver Oscar Piastri, with Bortoleto moving to Red Bull after just a single season at Mercedes. Oliver Behrman will then make their move over to Mercedes, with Pepe Marti joining Haas, and Taylor Barnard is the newest rookie who will drive for the Racing Bulls. There will also be some big regulation changes, with the aerodynamics, chassis and powertrain departments all being hit for next year. Now despite the big changes, McLaren do retain their title and remain at the top of the standings, while Ferrari have to settle with 2nd, and Mercedes jump Red Bull to finish in 3rd. The driver standings did see more of a shake-up, with Charles Leclerc moving down to P4, being overtaken by George Russell, who secures another 3rd place finish. The Ferrari driver of Lando Norris would return to take 2nd place and finishes as the runner-up for a 2nd consecutive title won by Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Now despite only having a gap of just under 30 points, his 10 race wins was a dominant display, with runner-up Lando Norris only managing to win 3. George Russell and Charles Leclerc both won a race, with Zane Maloney taking his Williams car to a race win in his debut season. Now a few more driver moves this season, with Red Bull and Mercedes swapping drivers, which will see Bortoleto return to Mercedes, while George Russell will move to Red Bull. Liam Lawson leaves Formula 1 and is replaced by the newest race winner Zane Maloney, with Williams bringing in former Academy member Zach O'Sullivan. Victor Martins is also dropped by the Kick Sauber team, with Enzo Fittipaldi being signed for Season 8. Now this year doesn't see much change in the Constructors once again, with McLaren remaining on top, Ferrari in 2nd and Red Bull and Mercedes once again swapping places. The Drivers' Championship did see some small changes, including Alex Albon dropping to 11th, while Lando Norris drops to finish in 3rd place, just ahead of Charles Leclerc. George Russell was able to finish as the runner-up this season at Red Bull, but can't do enough to stop Kimi Antonelli from winning another Drivers' Championship. Now an absolute masterclass from Kimi this year, winning a total of 9 races, while George Russell would only win 3 times. Both Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc would then end the season with 2 race wins each. Liam Lawson does return to Formula 1 to replace Enzo Fittipaldi after just 1 season out, much like Victor Martins, who comes in to replace Taylor Barnard at the Racing Bulls. 4 drivers then move around, with George Russell moving to Ferrari, Charles Leclerc moving to Red Bull, Bortoleto moving to McLaren, and Oscar Piastri making the move to Mercedes. Now alongside these driver moves there will also be some small regulation changes, but will only affect the chassis department this year. Heading into the penultimate season of the inaugural F1 25 simulation, the Constructors' Championship remains the exact same as how it ended in Season 8, with McLaren winning the title, Ferrari in 2nd, and Red Bull finishing in 3rd. The Drivers' Championship on the other hand does see some small changes, most notably George Russell moving down to 3rd place, being overtaken by his new teammate Lando Norris, who finished this season as runner-up. He once again finishes behind Kimi Antonelli, who will take a 4th championship in a row in incredibly dominant fashion. His 12 race wins and 369 points would have seen him finish just behind Ferrari by himself. Both Ferraris tried to put up a fight as they took 2 race wins each, but was nowhere near enough to stop the young Italian. The Racing Bulls have decided to go back on their decision at the end of last season, bringing Taylor Barnard back to replace Victor Martins. Charles Leclerc has been moving around a lot and will leave Red Bull, with Oscar Piastri returning to his old stomping grounds. Gabriel Bortoleto makes a move back to Mercedes, and Charles Leclerc isn't leaving the sport just yet, returning to the team that he won a championship with, that being McLaren. Now also going into the final season, there will be some small changes to both the aerodynamics and durability departments to hopefully give some more spice. But going into the final season, not much change in the constructors as McLaren remain on top, Ferrari in second, and Mercedes were moving back up to third to overtake Red Bull. The top 3 in the driver standings don't see any change into the final year, with George Russell finishing in third, just 14 points behind his teammate Lando Norris. But with a 176 point gap to second place, Kimi Antonelli remains at the very top of the standings to win one last title. This would be his most successful season, taking 13 race wins, rivaling Verstappen's first season where he won 14 times, but did have 8 more chances. Both Ferrari drivers continue to win a single race each, while the Mercedes driver of Gabriel Bortoleto has his best result and scores his first ever Formula 1 race win. And there we have it, the first 10 seasons of F1 25 MyTeam 2.0 have been simulated. But who was the best performer, and who will be the next Nico Hülkenberg? First, let's have a look at the Constructor Champions, in which 3 different teams were able to finish at the top. Red Bull Racing were able to take 2 titles, followed by Ferrari winning 3, and then McLaren dominated the second half of the simulation to take 5 titles. 4 different drivers were able to win their own championship, with Charles Leclerc finally achieving greatness, even if he had to move to McLaren to do it. Lando Norris would also win 2 titles, much like Verstappen, who would only retire as a 6-time champion. The biggest shock would be the major success of Kimi Antonelli, who catapulted himself to one of the greatest of all time, by taking 5 world championships and 5 championships in a row. Across the 200 races in this simulation, 11 different drivers would win, with Maloney, Hamilton, Bortoleto and Ocon all winning 1 each. Piastri would only win twice, while Alex Albon would take 4. Then there's a big jump up to George Russell, who won 19 times, while Charles Leclerc would take 33 race wins. Lando Norris would win 40, Verstappen 44, and Antonelli enters the simulation as the most successful, winning 54 races alongside his titles. And that is going to wrap up the first simulation on F1 25, and I must admit, playing this new game, it feels really good. Now make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and help me on the charge to 10k subs. There's plenty of links in the description to all my social media platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, and even my Discord server. But that's going to be all from me today, so I hope you have a good day, evening, or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.